Today I'm going to teach you how to train your dog or your puppy the leave it cue. Leave it is used to teach your dog to ignore things that he really wants. So if you think your dog needs to learn this skill, make sure you keep watching. What's up guys, it's Jenna with Dog Liaison, where I coach you on how to enhance your dog's mental health needs, and on this channel we break down scientific research in order to inform and educate us on how to train dogs. So if you're interested in a nerdier approach to dog training, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Before we jump into the tutorial, I do want to give the disclaimer that this activity is really not for resource guarders. If you have a dog that resource guards food, I really recommend you work through that issue first and then return back to this activity down the road. But assuming your dog does not resource guard food and assuming you think your dog is the right fit, let's get into it. The first thing to realize about the leave it behavior is that it is a learned skill. It's really not very innate. Your dog does not come pre-equipped with the ability to stop his compulsions and just not respond to it, especially with something like food or something that he really wants and needs in order to live. It goes against all basic laws of nature to just be like, I don't think I'm gonna go for that thing. So what we're going to do is make sure that we are giving him a trade instead. We'll say, look, I know that you think that thing is really awesome. I know that you really want that thing. I know that your genetics and your DNA tell you that thing is for you, but that's not for you. I don't want you to have that. So in return, I am willing to offer you this other thing instead. Your dog is going to learn better when you're offering a trade, not when you're saying, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. But if you're saying, I'll give you something else, I'll give you something else other than that, but that's not for you, they're more willing to bargain with you. For this activity, you're going to need at least 2 values of treats. You're probably going to need a lower value treat and a medium value, or a medium value and a high value. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, low, medium, high value treats, and you're like, what does that mean? Then this video is for you, and I recommend that you check it out. But for this activity, you will need just a small handful of lower value treats and a big chunk of the medium or higher value treats. This is the thing you're asking her to leave, right? You're gonna put it on the floor and you're gonna cover it up with a palm like this. Okay. So you're going to put a treat on the ground and then cover it up with your hand, and you're going to put your entire palm on it. Then as soon as the dog disengages even slightly, you're going to say yes and treat. Now at this point, you are not saying the cue, leave it. You probably are not saying anything other than your marker word, which is usually yes or good. Now what you're looking for is for either your dog to turn his head away from your hand, to turn his back entirely on it, or at the very minimum to move his eyes away from the hand. The moment even slightly he disengages, you're going to yes and feed. You are throwing the treat away. You're tossing the treat across the room to the point where your dog literally has to turn his entire back away from the thing that you're asking him to leave. Yes, there. So the second that she relieved her mouth and she because she was nipping at you and then she stopped, that moment you can yes and feed. Now if your dog stops and freezes and you're not really getting him to look away or to disengage, but at the very minimum he isn't attacking your palm or trying to get after the food, that is something that you can feed, that is something that you can reward, but you quickly want to progress out of that stage and implement harder criteria as you go. Remember that the leave it means disengage. Look away. You don't get that thing. Now what you're going to do is you're going to end up asking your dog to ignore the lower value treats, and in return you'll offer him the higher value food. Now this is because dogs learn quickest when they realize that they're getting something higher value instead. So for example, if someone said, look, you can take that $5 if you want, but if you don't touch that $5, I'll give you $10 back, you're gonna probably wait it out and get the $10 back, and you're gonna learn that pretty quickly, right? So you want to make sure that you are offering him a higher value trade. Practically, you're not going to be able to constantly level up and offer him a higher value thing. Down the road, when you're out using this in the world, you may or may not have something of higher value than the thing that you're asking him to ignore. So in that case, it's more about making sure that you have a comparable pay, that you are trading your dog something of equal value. What you do not want to do is ask your dog to leave something and then pay him something of lesser value. That is a quick way to teach your dog that he loses out on trades, and he's not going to be willing to bargain for that. Once you have mastered this step, it's time to move on to the next one. But before we move on to the next step, smash that like button to let the YouTube algorithm know that you are enjoying this video. The next step is to move on to the claw hand. What you're gonna do now is, instead of having a flat palm, I want you to do claw hands. There you go. And the same thing applies. The second that she disengages, yeah, that, there. Good. Wait for her to disengage. There. Good. There, take that. Good.
Yes.
Good timing, really good timing. Now the claw hand is a way to accelerate the difficulty level, but you do need to be careful with this one. This is where the dogs might be a little bit more sneaky and be able to steal some treats. Be careful with that. Now the reality is, even if your dog does steal treats, don't worry about it. Let him swallow the food. It's gonna be okay. You know, this is why we start off with treats. This is why we start off with things that are low risk, because your dog is going to make mistakes. It's gonna be okay. Do not put your hand in his mouth and try to pull that thing out. That is a way to start resource guarding. That is a way to antagonize resource guarding. So do not do that. Just let him have it, reset, start over. It's gonna be okay. Now, as you start to progress in your difficulty by changing your hand positions and things like that, you're still not saying leave it just yet, unless your dog starts to predict that he's not supposed to touch it. Now, generally speaking, the way I see that a dog is predicting it is that they move their head from hand to hand. So they're staring at this hand, and then they're staring at that hand, and then they're staring at this hand, and then they're staring at that hand. And you know, they're switching between the food that you're asking them to leave to the hand with all of the rewards. Be careful with this. Yes, that tells me that they're starting to catch on a little bit, but you don't necessarily want your dog just, you know, jumping between hand and hand and hand and hand. We're looking for the dog to disengage. We're looking for the dog to look elsewhere, move elsewhere, whatever. So if your dog is in fact disengaging and is not just moving from hand to hand to hand, then you can start adding in the leave it cue.
Leave it? Yes.
Good job. That timing was really good.
Oh, I forgot to disengage.
Okay. I would yes that and then just toss it. Because even though this isn't clean and perfect, it's at least that delay. And for day one, lesson one, that's perfect. Leave it.
Leave it?
There you go. Okay. Good. Be a little bit quicker with that leave it cue.
Okay. Does it when he's like walking in the direction, or he just is staring?
So the sooner you can say it when he looks at the treat, the sooner he's taking notice of the treat, that's really when you should be saying leave it. Leave it?
Leave it? Yes.
Good. Now, actually, what cue you say, what words you say for the cue don't really matter. You can say whatever you want, but leave it is usually the common one. Overall, remember a couple things. One, you are asking your dog to disengage, so you're looking for your dog to move on from the thing that you're asking him to leave. Two, remember that you are going against DNA. You're going against his hardwired neural pathways that tell him he is supposed to eat the food you're asking him to leave. So give him the benefit of the doubt. When he steals one, go, oh, genetics won that round, and then move on. Okay, you are asking him to do something that is opposite of what his DNA tells him to do. So be patient with that. And three, remember that you need to generalize this behavior. So just because you taught leave it in this context under this situation, now you need to start using other materials. You need to ask him to leave a shoe. You need to ask him to ignore whatever, a water bottle. Use things that are low risk first, and then you can start to implement it practically. This video is only step one, stage one of the Leave It behavior. If you're interested in more, make sure to comment below and tell me. The other thing is that I see dog owners make so many mistakes when they're teaching Leave It to their dogs, so many silly mistakes that are easy fixes, and so I've actually made an entire video on the mistakes people make. So that video will be out in a couple of days, so if you're interested, make sure to hit subscribe, and if you're watching this video well into the future, it's linked right here and you can click right into that now. If you're interested in more how-to videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.